My name is Benjamin Davis. I'm the leader of the strategic program on rural poverty reduction at the Food and Agricultural Organization of the United Nations. And I just want to thank the organizers for the opportunity to be here today. It's quite an honor to participate in this conference and to be joined by this distinguished group of policymakers and practitioners, champions for social protection, for universal social protection. Let me introduce them briefly. First, we have Ms. Cecilia Mbaka, who's the head of the National Social Protection Secretariat, the State Department of Social Protection in Kenya. Next, we have the Honorable Susan Shabangu, who's the Minister of Social Development from South Africa. We also have, to my left, Mr. Gombo Suren Unubayar, who's the State Secretary of the Ministry of Labor and Social Protection of Mongolia. And finally, we have Ms. Maha Mezruli, the Senior Economist from the Ministry of Social Affairs. So how will this session work? I'll give a brief introduction to the session, then we'll have a panel format, and so I have some questions for each of the panelists, and then if there's time, we'll open it up for broader discussion and for questions if all of you have comments or questions you'd like to make. So I'm from the Food and Agriculture Organization, and people all the time ask, why does FAO concern itself with social protection? And first and foremost, because it's fundamental to our mission. Without social protection, we can't achieve our global goals of eliminating hunger, reducing rural poverty, and fostering sustainable agriculture. It's impossible. Social protection complements everything that we do. So I want to give a little context to this session about making the case for universal social protection. I have 4 points. They follow along on what we heard in the first session. I'm sure there are more, but basically 4 points on why we're here advocating for universal social protection. First, it's a matter of rights, of justice, punto, for everyone. As we heard, the right to Social Security is enshrined in the Universal Declaration of Human Rights and the International Covenant on Economic, Social, and Cultural Rights. Effective access to social protection is essential to fill many of the other rights, including the right to food, the right to education, and the right to health. Many national constitutions include the right to social protection, including 2 of the countries on the panel, South Africa and Kenya, and many countries have anchored social protection benefits in their national legislation. So first and foremost, it's a question of rights. Now, I think as we all know, many influential decision makers may need to be persuaded by other arguments and other reasons, right? And so the second point I want to make is the strong economic rationale for social protection. There's very clear, rigorous evidence, much of it generated jointly by the governments here today, in particular South Africa and Kenya, along with the World Bank, with UNICEF, and FAO, pointing to the economic importance of social protection. First and foremost is the question of human capital development, and there's a long history of evidence around demonstrating this impact in terms of relaxing the demand-side constraints to education and health, leading to increased productivity now and in the future of children who benefit from social protection. Second, it enhances the economic and productive potential of the poorest. It relaxes liquidity and credit constraints to investment in self-employed activities, agriculture in particular. It's a tool to manage risks, to raise the horizon from immediate survival to longer-term potential of economic accumulation. And third, it can stimulate local economic development. And here, social protection can stimulate demand for goods and services, leading to economic multipliers, often in more marginal rural communities. These last 2 areas, the economic and the local economic development, have been particular focus of FAO with partners over the past 10 years in terms of demonstrating that impact, particularly in sub-Saharan Africa, Latin America, and other regions. So what it means for social protection beneficiaries, there are real tangible impacts on livelihoods. And when it's linked with the perspective of productive inclusion, explicitly linking social protection with livelihood initiatives, with agricultural policy and programs, it creates synergies for real potential and a real potential for impact. The third point is there's also a very strong environmental and sustainability rationale for social protection, okay, particularly in the context of climate change. First, it's reducing vulnerability and the reliance on negative risk coping strategies in the face of shocks. It helps households smooth consumption, protect their assets, and protect their natural resources. Second, it can facilitate the transition to more sustainable livelihoods. And this is crucial because the poor, and particularly the rural poor, are often the guardians of crucial natural resources which are being affected by climate change. And so it can be an integral part of climate change adaptation and mitigation strategies. It's playing a central role in early Green Climate Fund projects. There's even an example from Paraguay where the project is being built on the back of a social protection system. And so it's fundamental to that transition to more sustainable livelihoods. And then finally, social protection systems can play an important role in terms of disaster preparedness and response. So finally, my fourth point is that social protection is a cross-cutting, fundamental part of the SDG agenda. It's a key instrument which cuts across the SDGs. And here I'll make an appeal, is that it really needs to be focused explicitly on rural areas, because without that, we're not going to reach most of the SDG goals. In rural areas is where you find the bulk of the poor and the extreme poor. And in terms of not leaving anyone behind, this is where you find the most vulnerable, the poorest, and the hardest to reach. And so universal social protection doesn't just happen universally and all at once. You need to make dedicated, specific efforts to reach the most vulnerable, and we should start with them, perhaps, for once. And that includes indigenous peoples, people in the informal sector in rural areas, forest communities, fisher folk, rural women. And this is really the only way, obviously, to reach SDG 1.3, but also 1.1, 2.1, 10.4, etc. And so to do this, we need champions. We have the champions here today for universal social protection on the panel. And so with that, I would just like to begin the panel discussion. So first, my first question is for the Honorable Minister from South Africa. Minister, what were the reasons for which South Africa decided to significantly extend social protection coverage for the large majority of children, persons with disabilities, and older people, as well as domestic and rural workers? And what was the role of evidence?
Thank you very much for that question. The reason for South Africa for adopting or realizing the universal social protection as a human right matter. The reason is that if we go back to 1994, where we adopted a constitution which talks to the issues of human rights, and on the basis of that, it was felt that we cannot be a country which continues to experience poverty, but also which continues with inequalities. And on the basis of that, at various times, we had to come up with mechanisms which intend to address poverty, but also in making sure that we are a country which works towards equality. Hence, we adopted the National Development Plan, which is in line with the Sustainable Development Goals. And part of that, it's in line with that because in 2030, we all know that we've committed to eradication poverty through SDGs, and as a country, through our National Development Plan, which is also very much in line with the SDGs, which is 2030, where we committed as a country to have poverty in our country by 2030. And that tends to address the issues of education, where we've committed to making sure that we provide free compulsory basic education for our children from grade 0 up to grade 12, which will be your from primary to secondary education, which has been offered free. But we've gone further now to extend the free basic education to tertiary education, where now we have our national NSFAS, which is our National Student Fund, which intends to make sure that kids from poor communities can have access to higher education in our country, as making sure that education becomes free to those who cannot afford. As we know that if you are a country, you are unable to have educated communities, then it has an impact of not being able to advance your interest or your country's needs, both socially and economically. Hence the issue of targeted education, free education at tertiary and higher education in our country. But I also need to indicate that we've also looked at making sure that we have social grant, and our social grants refers to the pensionables, the elderly people. It also covers our disability. It also covers children or teenage pregnancies, where young kids or teenage girls get pregnant and are unable to take care of their children, and we offer child grant. Linked to the child grant also now, we've also introduced a second chance for the teenage girls in making sure that they are able to go back to school and further their education, because we all know if those girls remain at home and are unable to advance their education, it would have meant that their future is doomed. So we have a program which is called Second Chance. Linked to that, I think there has been a big discussion, which is known globally, where we talk about health, the national health insurance. And that system now, I am comfortable to say, as a country now, it's in front of Parliament, where it's going to be discussed and be taken further for its final implementation. And linked to that, we are a country which has maternity leave, and recently we've passed on the issue of paternity leave for men, because it's important for men to play a role when it comes to the family, but also the children, bonding with the children. So it's not only maternity for women, it's also for men. And these are some of the issues which we've introduced as a country. We have expanded public works program, which becomes part of making sure that those who are unemployed, they can find employment. And recently linked to that, we've just passed a minimum wage, proclaimed a minimum wage where no one must earn below a 20 rand per hour in our country. We have the UIF, which we're re-looking at it together with road accident funds for those who are involved in accidents, for them to be able to be sustained within the process. So we have many issues which intend to have poverty in our country, but also as part of our universal social protection in ensuring that no one goes hungry. Lastly, I also want to say, linked to health, we are providing 4.4 million plus people in our country with ARVs, which its intention is to extend their lifespan, and that has really worked well for South Africa. So these are some of the issues, and how we have achieved some of these universal social protection or access to social protection. It's also by engaging the various stakeholders, the various partners. It's your private sector, it's your labor, it's your civil society in our country, in making sure that we become inclusive as we advance the interest of social protection in our country. I think I would want to stop there for now. Thank you.
Great, thank you. Minister, can I follow up that question and ask you, how have these policies contributed to economic and social development in South Africa, in particular rebuilding the post-apartheid society?
Well, I must say this has really improved and make sure that everyone becomes part of the integrated South Africa, because we come from a past where we had a society which was highly depleted, highly discriminatory, and that has contributed also in making sure that it creates opportunities by making sure that through the various policies we see more young people, elderly people being part of the economic development in our country. That is why we are talking about the second chance for young children, for young girls, but also we're talking about our education system, which has contributed to ensuring that we open up economic opportunities for many, many people in our country. It has contributed to making sure that your SMMEs too can contribute in growing our economy. We might not be performing well so far because of where we come from, but we are positive that the line we've taken when it comes to universal social protection, it's not just about being a welfare state, but it's also about how do we grow our economy by creating opportunities and various subsidies for business opportunities in South Africa. And that assists us in ensuring that we are inclusive, but we also make sure that even those who are poor are able to access opportunities through various, for instance, housing. We have subsidized housing in South Africa, which makes sure that there's decent living for various communities. And we are also looking at various opportunities where there are also business opportunities and subsidies, which allows various communities or various people who want to enter business to have those opportunities. There are subsidies, for instance, for those who want to start businesses. There are various hubs. And recently now, through the presidency, we are seeing opportunities when it comes to the fourth industrial revolution by making sure that we have programs partnering with various private sector companies. It is part of poverty alleviation, but also as part of skills development in our country. We are one country which has also, as the previous speaker indicated, the issue of corporate social investments. We are a beneficiary as a country when it comes to corporate social investments, where the majority of the private sector companies are playing a role in job creation, in skilling of our young people, but also in making sure that opportunities and set-asides are there for those who want to participate in contributing towards our economies. These are some of the issues which in the past were never there, but where we are, the whole issue of integration, the whole issue of the various partnerships in skills development, in job opportunities is there in creating a better South Africa. And where we are, we also intend to, as I spoke about poverty and the intergenerational poverty which we've seen for many, many years, improving those kind of issues in our country. So expanded public works, it's also a stopgap measure in skilling our people, making them ready for other job opportunities which may arise in our country. So these are some of the issues which we are doing, coming from the past, in making sure that we become an inclusive society. And the last thing which I would also like to indicate is that we also see the issue of universal social protection being the issue of closing the gap between the poor and the rich, but also closing the gap between the sick and the healthy. That's how we see shaping South Africa to be a better country for all of us. Thank you.
Excellent, thank you. Next, I'd like to ask the question to Mr. Secretary. Why has Mongolia extended social protection to previously uncovered populations, including making benefits and services accessible to rural populations, including herders?
Thank you, moderator. Thank you for your question. I am pleased to share our experience at this important event. Half of Mongolia population are herders, and animal husbandry play big role in the economy of the country. The contribution of animal husbandry to GDP is more than 10%, and about 30% of employed population are herders. Income from animal husbandry is the only source of income of nearly 20% of total households. Until 1999, Mongolia was a socialist country. During the socialist time, the state used to provide old age pension to all herders when they retire. Because at that time all economic activities were state-owned, and therefore herders were actually working for the state and getting wages and incentives. The current package of law on social insurance entered into force from 1995. And according to current laws and regulations, herders can pay voluntary contributions equivalent to 11% of their income. Thus, they become eligible for old age benefits for disability, and breadwinner loss. However, in real life, due to low and unstable income, as well as convenience to pay the premiums, the coverage of herders in social insurance system is extremely low. Therefore, old age security for herders is a priority of the government to prevent them from falling into poverty. We need to find solution, appropriate mechanism to enable their monthly contribution to the social insurance fund, and thus to ensure their old age security. The government of Mongolia is taking some measures to improve and old age security for herders. Since 2012, the government is implementing an important measure to improve old age income security of people who were not able to work during the transition period. More specifically, the gaps in pension contribution of those who were not working during 1999 and 2000 were subsidized by the government, and 20% of those who benefited from this measure were herders. In addition, we are implementing a new policy to reduce the pension age of herders by 5 years, considering the health condition of their labor. Furthermore, a new law will become effective from 2020, which will enable herders and self-employed to pay once for their pension contributions to cover the period of 1995 to 2090, when they had to change their employment status or failed to be employed due to the nature of their occupation or work. On the other hand, our social protection policy for herders aims to protect the livestock sector in the future. As the younger generation is not willing to become herders, thus the number of herders is likely to reduce significantly in the future. This has also a negative impact on the land that might become deserted and inhabited, especially remote rural areas currently occupied by nomad herders. Thank you.
Thank you very much for that. I think it's a good example of the importance of, or the challenges of extending social protection benefits to more isolated, difficult to reach rural areas, and benefits which are actually in tune and appropriate for the given livelihood of, in this particular case, and the characteristics of rural herders. If I can follow up with the next question, and that's what's interesting here is how is the combination of contributory and non-contributory mechanisms, both social insurance and tax-funded benefits, facilitated this extension of coverage?
In Mongolia, 79% of economically active population, 59% of entities, and 6% of herders are covered by social insurance. Those citizens who are not eligible for pensions and benefits from the social insurance fund receive pension and benefits from social welfare fund. So the combination of contributory and non-contributory mechanism facilitate the full coverage of old age security for elderly. Mongolia has a generous system of tax funded by social welfare benefits, including the recipient of child money program. The half of Mongolia population are beneficiaries of the social welfare services. If we look at a specific group of population, 70% of elderly, 87% of people with disabilities, 87% of children are benefiting from one or more social welfare measures. The current priority of the government is now to shift from welfare to employment by adding some conditionality to the social welfare programs for working age people. For instance, our Good Stamp program has now some conditions for working age people to actively search for jobs. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. Next, I'd like to ask Ms. Iliambaka, why has Kenya decided to invest in developing a social protection system and move towards universal coverage? And what was the role of evidence in that process?
Thank you, Chair. As Kenya, we are very happy to be here to share with all of us our journey on social protection, which has been very exciting. And the reason why Kenya has decided to invest in social protection is because, to start with, we are obligated by various international, regional, and local obligations to design and implement social protection programs. Just moving straight to local, our Constitution is very clear on issues of social protection. In one of the articles, and that is Article 43 of our Constitution, it obligates the state to support people who cannot be able to support themselves and their families. In addition to that, Article 22 also allows citizens to institute court proceedings in case that right is violated. As a country, we also have our Vision 2030, which aims at providing a high quality of life for all citizens by the year 2030. And the goal of the social pillar is to build a just and cohesive society with social equity. And with those obligations then, as a country, we have started a number of social protection programs. And before I go to sharing with you the various social protection programs, I would like to share with you our high poverty levels by the time we were starting to roll out social protection programs. In 2005, Kenya's poverty levels were as high as 46%, and I will be telling you later where we are now. And since 2003, we rolled out the cash transfer for orphaned and vulnerable children. We have also gradually rolled out the older persons cash transfer program. And in the current year, last year, we rolled out the universal cover for older persons. We are also running a free maternal and child health. We've been running it since 2013 with a lot of impacts on it, as I'll be sharing with you. We're running school feeding programs in arid and semi-arid part of Kenya. And for those of you who do not know, half of Kenya is made up of arid and semi-arid lands, where the poverty levels in those countries are very poor. And so we have started school feeding programs to encourage children to go to school and to remain in school to be able to learn. We are also piloting the universal health cover. We are piloting it in about 5 counties. and hopefully rolling out in all parts of the country after 1 year, after we have learned experiences and we can be able to expand it. We're also running the free primary education, which we started in the year 2002, and bearing a very with a lot of impact as we speak. We're also running social security programs and the health insurance program. And what I would want to say is that we're seeing a lot of impact on these programs. To start with, when we did our Kenya Integrated Household Budget Survey in 2005, as I said, and we did the last one in 2015, our poverty levels have dropped by 10%. We are now at 36%. And this is being attributed to some of the social protection programs that we have been running in the last couple of years. I would also want to say that with the CTOVC program, we have seen increased school enrollment, retention, and transition rates. This is evidenced by impact evaluations that we have done in the last couple of years. We are seeing improved nutrition and dietary diversity because of the cash transfer programs that we're giving to households with young children. We are seeing a reduction in child labor and very many other benefits that are coming with these programs. With our free maternal and child health for children below 5 years of age, we are seeing more mothers giving birth in hospitals. In fact, in the urban areas, we are enrolling even up to 100% of mothers giving birth in hospitals, although this will vary in the rural areas because of the transport issues and the ignorance, but we can say that this has seen more mothers giving high in hospitals, and so the survival rates are actually quite high. Yes, thank you.
So in Kenya, in what direction will the country be going in the near future in terms of continuing to expand the universal social protection?
As we think about expanding our social protection programs, moving forward, we would want to see more life cycle approach to our social protection programs. Already we are there. We are seeing programs covering expectant mothers. We have programs for children below 18 years of age. We have youth programs. For example, we are running a youth fund that enables young people to get very soft loans that they can be able to start businesses with. We are seeing programs for older persons, and so moving forward, we would want to strengthen the life cycle approach to social protection. In addition to that, we're moving towards universality. We have already started a universal program for older persons aged 70 years and above. We are also having a debate on progressively introducing universal child grant that we shall be discussing in the next 3 days, those of us who will continue being here. Now, the other thing is that as we move forward, issues of sustainability are very key to us. Because as we extend the programs, then we shall be requiring a lot of resources to be able to support these programs. And so we're lobbying the government to continue supporting social protection programs. Last year we had an international conference on sustainable financing for social protection. I know some of you who are here participated in that conference. So it is a debate that we would really want to carry forward. Other than that, we have developed an investment plan towards the Vision 2030. It details the kind of programs that we would want to see either rolled out or expanded as we move towards the Vision 2030, and the kind of budgets that government will be requiring to be able to run those programs. so that every time we're not going to Treasury to tell them we need this money to do this and the other. We've already developed an investment plan so that the government is well prepared on the kind of resources that we shall be requiring moving forward. In addition to that, as we think about issues of sustainable financing, we have come up with a task force that is discussing how the government will continue raising resources to support the cash transfer programs. And as a country, we would, other than depending on the exchequer, we are trying to see how we can come up with very innovative ways of raising money for the cash transfer programs. And we're looking at how citizens can be able to contribute small amounts to save for their retirement in a very innovative way. I want to go into a lot of details on that because it is still under discussion. It has not been firmed up. But moving forward, we would want to see a situation where citizens contribute some small monies which is topped up by the government to be able to save for their retirement. In addition to that, we would want to see the government increase its levels of GDP towards social protection. Currently is about 1.5%, with cash transfers taking about 0% of the GDP. As we discuss the issues of sustainability, we would want to see the government continue to increase the GDP, to increase the levels of the GDP that is going towards the investment of social protection. And in our investment plan, we're looking at the government increasing this to about 2 to 3% of the GDP going towards social protection. Yeah. Thank you.
Great. No, thank you. My next question is for Ms. Maha Mesri. In Tunisia, has been very committed to extending social protection benefits and has achieved impressive results. What makes investments in social protection so important for Tunisia's economic and social development?
Thank you, Chair. First of all, I would like to welcome the Minister, extend the greetings of the Minister of Social Affairs, who was unable to be here today because of professional commitments. I thank you for your question. I'm going to give you an overview of Tunisia's experience in social affairs. The social protection system in our country is based on a number of social welfare programs and insurance measures. So social security in Tunisia dates back to 1998, when the first fund was created for workers for the first retirement program in the country. We had a program of compensation, and then it was really launched in the following years, and there has been an ongoing progressive extension of this to all professional categories. In 1959, there was a system for the private sector, and the non-agricultural sector next, then the students in 1965, etc. And right now, Social Security covers all sectors of activity, and the real coverage is 85%. This is not only limited to workers residing in Tunisia, but for foreigners as well, through bilateral agreements of social security. There is an optional system for Tunisians working abroad. In terms of social assistance programs, we have a leading program for the needy, begun in '86 for cash transfers to families under that are needy, and in '98 we had a system of free insurance program launched by the government. So our system of social insurance has been very effective in fighting against poverty, but there are limits, and we have undertaken public actions for social assistance. There has been fragmentation amongst the different programs as a setback. Today, we have a series of reforms that have been undertaken by our country. In the Constitution of 2012, in Article 38, we guarantee for social coverage, and this has given us the opportunity to undertake social reform to improve efficacy. The main objectives of this reform is to reform the social security system and to reform the imbalances. The reform of social assistance is guaranteed by state, and we only tax certain categories. We have a number of objectives. We have created a new structure for reforms, and we have been setting up a foundation for social reform under the Law 202 in 2012. We have tried to universalize our social protection in our social security system, and particularly the retirement benefits. And we should recall that our system is linked to professional activity and works in a distributive manner based on contributions of workers. This is a national priority for the government. We have increasing difficulties for financing social funds due to demographic change, economic issues, and parametric changes to the retirement system. We are reforming our social assistance programs, and the goal is to improve our targeting and the efficiency of our social programs aimed at the poor populations with limited incomes. Lastly, we are also striving to set up national strategies to fight against poverty and work for inclusion. This is a multi-dimensional approach to attack poverty, not only from a monetary point of view, but to improve access of the poor to basic necessities and to favor the better services. Our social program is one that we are deeply committed to, and we have a tripartite consensus around this issue. We believe this is an irreversible way to fight against poverty. The guarantees that we're working on is access to universal coverage, and we have taken up efforts by the country to improve universal coverage. We only have 8.2% of the population that is not covered, and we are making sure that we will extend this and give this population greater accessibility. We wish to ensure minimal wages and to help those with disabilities. And tomorrow and the next day we will be able to talk about the following point, a children's fund, children's income. We are now reflecting about different guarantees, and we're working with the ILA and UNICEF for our work on children, and we are trying to develop greater financial feasibility and to see how we can guarantee the longevity and the sustainability of this social protection. Financial feasibility for children will also concern other areas as well. I thank you.
If I can just follow up on, can you explain a bit more in terms of how the social protection system in Tunisia contributes to decent work and inclusive growth?
Oui, tout à fait. Yes, absolutely. Our current working method entails looking at who is not included in the system, the social protection system at present. Our goal is to focus on inclusiveness. So we look at individuals who are struggling to have access to social protection and try to reach out to them. This is especially relevant for the informal sector, for rural women who are working. We also have protections in place, legal protections, but in the rural sector, income fluctuates and there's low income levels. In light of this, it's difficult to establish a social security system there. So we're working to ensure social protection that is attractive, that bears in mind the contributions that rural women can make. Our 2019 finance law proposes a contribution level which is rather low, 6.7%. Our goal here is to really incentivize access to social protection in the rural sector, ensuring coverage and decent work, which contributes to the economic development of the country. Now, as I said, in terms of poor individuals, what we're doing right now is trying to ensure that these families do not remain poor. So we need to invest in pulling them out of poverty. That's why we have a program to fight poverty and ensure social inclusion. This is a very important program. We're trying to ensure livelihoods for every household to see how we can help them leave poverty behind. We look at social protection for children and for people who are unable to work. So we're trying to help them leave behind the vicious cycle of poverty, ensuring adequate and decent social protection. Thank you.
Thank you very much. We still have a few minutes, 15 minutes, for questions from the audience, and so I'll open it up. Right there.
Okay, thank you very much. My name is Marvi Maiman, and I'm the CEO of Lifelong Learners Consultancy. I'm the former chairperson of Benazir Income Support Program, Minister for Social Safety earlier. My question really is about the main issue that we're discussing throughout this morning, which is 60% of the informal economy which doesn't have access to social protection. Now, the way I, as chairperson and former minister, and we in Pakistan dealt with it, I think was the National Socio-Economic Registry. When you register la plupart des gens, most of your population, then you're better able to capture that informal economy and have data on it. We were speaking about the lack of data. So I think investments need to be made by governments in that. I've seen that we in Pakistan made that investment and it paid off exceptionally well. My second point, because I'm a practitioner, I'm a politician, and I'm speaking out of pure experience, is the following, and I'm sure the panel which is sitting there is going to perhaps agree or disagree. There is a problem. We all have constitutions, we all have articles within constitutions which guarantee us this. We all have international obligations, but we also have elections and we also have change of governments. So we normally have a two-step forward, one-step backward approach, or vice versa, or whatever. We need to deal with that, and we need to ensure that when changes of government happen, those international obligations are super supreme, and they make sure that there's no backwards happening for the sake of change of governments. Those are comments. I'd like some response on that, please. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much for that question. Who would like to respond to that? So the importance of social registries and essentially the issue of political economy of social protection in maintaining over changes in government. Who would like to take that on? Minister?
Thank you very much. Just touching on the issue of data. As South Africa, we come from that past where we were not able to collect or collate and have proper data. But I am proud to say today we work on the basis of data in various areas. If we talk, for instance, about our social grants, the access to social grant, we have about 17.4 million people. So that's what helps us to plan. Because without a proper data on any issue, you will not be able to plan. So our data system might have challenges, but we are moving in the right direction. We also have Stats South Africa, which tends to be our institution which collects data on a regular basis, which it informs what we are doing as a country. So that helps us in being able to plan properly. When you look at, when we talk about access to schooling, for instance, I'll make an example. Last year we had about 300,000 young people who had access to grade 12. So that data helps us to plan, but also being able to say how many have passed, how many are going to university or tertiary education, and how many will go to your technical colleges. When I talk about the issue of second chance, it also helps us to say how many young people have dropped out from school, especially the girl child, and how many must go back to school to advance their education for them to prepare them for the future. So I think the issue of data is very, very critical, including access to jobs, access to the economy. We are able to say, for instance, as a country, we have a population, or we are a population of 43% being young people. That's a reflection that data helps us in our planning as we plan for the economy and plan to move forward. The issue of the Constitution, I must say, it becomes a critical document for any country, because it's a document which you don't wake up every morning and change it. It defines your country. Therefore, maybe in other countries it's different, but for us it's very, very important, because our fundamentals, our policies, and everything we do is enshrined in the Constitution. It becomes the base document for moving forward. The last point on elections and changes, maybe because we're a new democracy, we still have to confront the situation of changes in government by various political parties. For the past 25 years, we had an administration led by the ANC government. So we have not experienced changes on the basis of change of administration, like we can see now in America. As you change administration, then major changes happen. We still find ourselves in a space whereby there tend to be consistency in our policies as we move forward. So we have not been affected by change of, I don't want to say change of governments, change of administration, because change of government is different. But change of administration tends to contribute, but we are still fortunate. We have not gone through change of administration because the same party still rules even today. Thank you.
Thank you. Would anyone else like to say something about this? Would you?
Yes, thank you. In terms of databases, yes, this is very important. In Tunisia, we're currently setting up a database on poor families with limited income. This represents a significant portion of the population, and we know that there are people who could be contributing to the social security system but are working in the informal economy. What we're doing is trying to help them leave behind the informal system where they're not contributing and move into the formal system where they're contributing to social security. We're also trying to set up a single social registration number, which will allow us to create links between the social affairs database, the social security database, and so on. So this will help to make sure there are no overlaps. And that's why databases are so important. They're essential for making decisions and adapting our programs to meet the needs of all citizens. Thank you.
Thank you. Ms. Mbaka?
Thank you. I think I would want to confirm that social protection programs are very political are very political. And chances of having successive governments overturning things are actually very high. And the only way forward then is to ensure that when we initiate social protection programs, then they are entrenched in various policies and in various laws. As a country, we have developed what we call the single registry, which is a central repository of data on all programs on social protection. Currently is hosting data on the cash transfer programs, and moving forward we would want to see other pillars included, and that is the social security and social health insurance. At the same time, we have just entered into a contract with the World Bank where we are going to create a social registry within the single registry, which will map all the poor persons, their characteristics, so that anybody wishing to start social protection programs for the poor, they are easily identified within the social registry. You don't have to go looking for them, but they are already known, and that will make it very easy for various organizations wanting to start social protection programs.
Great, thank you. I had two questions. They had the advantage of being up here front that caught my eye already, no? So I have two questions and then we'll get a response. Yes, ma'am, please, first.
Merci beaucoup.
Thank you very much. I'd just like to share a few comments from the Senegalese point of view. As the Minister has just said, maintaining the progress put in place by other governments, past governments, called for creating institutional databases. So we also set up a single national registry, which includes poor and vulnerable households. In Senegal, we have 548,000 households in this database. And this is the National Statistics and Demographics Institution that set up this database. So thanks to this institutional infrastructure, we can maintain the progress of the past and not lose this progress. That means that social protection is something that we can continue to push forward, but we need to ensure that there are safeguards so that new regimes coming into place cannot overturn the progress of past governments. Thank you.
Thank you. Yes, the gentleman behind.
Yes, thank you very much. My name is Bart. I work for World Solidarity. It's a civil society organization linked to the labor movement in Belgium and a member of the Global Coalition for Social Protection Floors. Thank you for the different interventions and some of the concrete examples of your government to roll out universal social protection programs. Now, my question was more specifically for Ms. Mbaka. I was really delighted to hear how Kenya has really tried to move forward with rolling out universal social protection. You gave various examples of different programs, some contributory, sometimes non-contributory. My first question was, have you also as a government managed to bring them together in an overarching national social protection strategy to avoid fragmentation of different programs? But is there indeed an overarching strategy on social protection? Secondly, towards the end, you said moving forward, we want to see citizens now also contributing, for example, towards their pensions. The government would then top up these different amounts. Now, such a move, I think, would really require broad-based support in Kenyan society to allow for a maximum number of people to participate in such a contributory scheme. Now, to generate that broad-based support, are you launching a public debate? Are you working with social partners and perhaps also other civil society organizations that often have experiences in developing and managing such contributory schemes? Voilà.
Thank you. That question is for you. You want to...
What I would want to say as far as the overarching strategy is concerned, per se we do not have an overarching strategy. However, we have a national steering committee that is made up of government, civil society, and other development partners that is able to chart in a very strategic way on the direction we should be making as a country on social protection programs. But we have plans to come up with a social protection strategy that can guide us very well on how we want to move. On citizens' contribution, as I said, these are just very initial discussions. And what we would want to do is to use technology to see how citizens can be able to contribute and have a system that is very easy for them to be able to contribute. But as I said, we've not reached there, but those are our thoughts. Yeah.
Great, thank you. I think we have time for just one more comment. There was a woman of the yes. Thank you, please.
Thank you. This is Usha from UNICEF Nepal. Couple of questions. One very quick one is, we're talking about citizens' rights to social protection in various countries which are represented in the panel, and thanks for sharing that. But is there a vision inside the country for extending that to non-citizens, especially for migrants, for refugees? And I think all the countries which are there, except for Mongolia, would have those kind of challenges in some measure. The second question is about the quality of social protection, and that goes back to the point that Ms. Maha raised. You talked about attractive social protection. I really like that phrase, and which also is linked to ultimately to the graduation element of social protection that we haven't talked about. How are the countries ensuring that the social protection actually becomes effective, and how is financial sustainability being addressed within that?
Great, thank you. Would anyone like to briefly, quickly respond to those questions? Yes?
Thank you for your question. The issue of refugees and social protection, well, currently social protection is only available for Tunisian citizens. However, those who reside in the country can benefit from these social assistance programs that we have. We're currently considering this question. In fact, there's a text on providing assistance to refugees that we're looking at. This is an issue in Tunisia, but we don't yet have a draft bill, one that has been adopted yet. As for the quality of benefits, when we talk about universality, there's both horizontal universality and also a need for minimum benefits for all. For example, when looking at healthcare, we're considering a universal healthcare minimum, a minimum package of services that would be available to all people. So that's what we mean when we talk about quality of benefits. We don't want to provide poor quality coverage, especially when it comes to healthcare. Rather, we want to provide high quality coverage. If we have low quality coverage, then universality doesn't really make sense. So slowly but surely, we're trying to ratchet this up. So we're getting to the second level of the social protection floor, which is tied to the contributory system. So we're working both horizontally and vertically on this. Thank you.
Great. Thank you very much. I guess we should bring this to a close since the time's up. Just to make two quick points. The first is I think we've had 4 examples of very strong commitments to universal social protection. These 4 countries truly are champions in that sense, and we've seen the constant efforts in all 4 countries to expand, to realize universal social protection progressively, and particularly to the challenges of reaching into rural areas in all 4 countries, and how to make sure this continues and institutionally the infrastructure as well. The second point I want to bring up, which was just touched on briefly, and that's really about the considerable effort that was put in, at least by the 2 countries that I have experience with, South Africa and Kenya, in terms of developing the evidence and showing the impact of social protection, which is really the merit of these 2 governments. And just to say that social protection in sub-Saharan Africa is probably the most studied, documented government program on earth, and there's no doubts. The impact is clear, it's broad, it goes over a number of areas, and I think I just want to recognize this commitment from the governments of the region to document that case. And so really it's a political issue, it's no longer an issue of showing impact. So with that, thank you very much to all 4 panelists, appreciate very much.